Great. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for being here early on a Saturday. So yesterday, we had a lot of talks that were centered around how do you reach your audience from a content and editorial perspective. This morning, I'm going to talk about kind of the side that I work on. I'm a designer, so I'm going to talk about how designers and technology teams can work with editorial teams to also do a better job at reaching our audience. So I work for a company called Vox Media. We are a house of editorial brands, and we cover a range of different topics from news with Vox.com to sports, food. In a nutshell, we have The Verge, which is our technology site, so we're all about how technology is changing culture. Vox.com is the news site which is focused on making complex topics easier to understand because current events is very complicated, especially right now. SB Nation is our sports vertical, which is a community of about 300 plus sports brands. Eater, which is all around go-to places for food and restaurant reviews. Polygon, which is about video games and gaming and the people that make those games and play the games. Wrapped, which is about shopping. Curbed, which is about neighborhoods and where people live. And Recoded. So 8 kind of keystone brands in total. And then we also have Vox Creative, which is our in-house branded content studio. Chorus, which is our content management system that we, again, run in-house, and Concert, which is our premium ad marketplace, which is a partnership with Condé Nast and with NBC Universal. So what I do at Vox Media is I'm a design director of audience engagement. So what that means is I work on the design and the user experience across all of our websites, across all of those brands that I just talked about. And initially, I was going to call this talk, and it's actually in the agenda, reaching your audience with fast, performant sites. But the real message that I want to talk about is about reaching your audience wherever they are. I'm sure you're all aware of this, how much traffic we're getting from mobile devices now. This was a stat from the Pew Research, which said that 85% of adults in the US are currently getting their news from a mobile device. And that's compared to 72% last year and 54% in 2013. So it's seen a steady rise. And we're also at a point in time where more and more users are using mobile devices, but they're still accessing the web from somewhat fragile, slow networks. Many that aren't connected to Wi-Fi. And this could be different parts of the world have different connection speeds, but even us in the United States, if you are traveling and you're not connected to Wi-Fi and you're trying to look something up on your phone, you know the pains of trying to access content when you have a slow connection speed and you just need to get information. This is a statistic that is used most commonly when it comes to talking about slow sites. Which was published in an article from the New York Times several years ago, which said that online users expect pages to load in 2 seconds, and 53% will leave if it doesn't load in 3. So that's very quick, and a lot of websites aren't that fast, especially news websites. So this was another study from this organization that looked at 50 various daily newspaper websites from around the globe, and they found that the average load time was about 10.5 seconds, but some were even as slow as 22 seconds to load on a mobile device on a slow connection. But it is challenging, right? Because news sites are really complex. They're full of content types, photography, ads, scripts, analytics, tracking, video. So we're dealing with 2 different things. On the one side, we have an audience that needs fast content, that's trying to access this content through unreliable, slow networks. And then on the other side, we're producing dense, complex sites that are full of images and content types, so that it's kind of at odds with each other. Regardless of that, I think we have a responsibility to deliver the news quickly to our audience, regardless of where or how they're accessing our content. Making sure that people can view the content that they came to your site to view is the most important thing that you need to do, like straight off the bat. Like if they're not seeing the content, you know, what's the point? And I did some work a couple of years ago for El Nuevo Dia in Puerto Rico, and one of the use cases that came up was during emergency situations, like a hurricane, where people only had access to their phone and a data plan. We had to make sure that they could view the latest updates, that they could view all of the breaking news. So I think on top of users needing it, we have a responsibility as news organizations to deliver content quickly. And we do this by building faster sites. But this, of course, is challenging for the reasons that I mentioned before. In 2015, Vox Media's product team declared performance bankruptcy. Basically, what we said was, our sites took way, way longer to load than our competitors. You can see our competitors were all the way down here, and we're that one line at the top, which was significantly slower. And I think it can be easy to think about site speed as a developer's problem, right? They're doing optimizations, they're the ones that should care about this. But as our front-end engineering director said in this post, good performance is everyone's responsibility. Designers, front-end engineers, ads teams, editorial, and beyond. And what we found through the process of declaring performance bankruptcy and trying to make our sites more fast was that we really needed to change our culture in order to design faster sites across the board. So our operations team, they're focused on making sure that server response times are faster. Our engineering team is refactoring the front-end architecture to make sure that it's as light as possible, and they're working on image optimization. The revenue team is working on rewriting how we load ads onto our pages and removing blockers. But what I want to focus on is design and editorial, because I think that that's the one that gets the most overlooked when it comes to talking about site speed. So as designers, we had to work on simplifying our user experience and working with editorial and technology teams to find the best solutions that balanced performance with our business goals, with our user goals. And it also meant that editorial had to prioritize and understand that simplifying the site for the sake of faster load time is going to be better for our audience. And again, this wasn't easy because everyone wants all the bells and whistles and features possible on their websites. So we had to have a lot of difficult conversations about trade-offs in order to benefit our audience overall. So how that played out with our homepages. Vox Media homepages were known for being incredibly robust, beautiful, also very slow to load, which we heard from our users a ton. They would say, you know, it looks great, but it kills my data plan on a phone. It takes forever to load. So when we set out to redesign them, we had to ask ourselves, what's the most important thing that our audience needs to do? And ask ourselves, what is the value of a homepage today? Who is this audience? What are they looking for? How are our current homepages performing? And then we had to talk to that audience. Now, our homepages aren't our greatest source of traffic, right? They make up about a quarter of our traffic, with most people going straight to articles from social. But many of our brands have a really loyal homepage audience, and these are the people that come back every day. They're the people that comment. They're the people that write user-generated content, which we call fan posts. And we don't want to disregard those people. So we worked with our editorial engagement editors to work on a user survey to understand what this specific audience was looking for. And we found that because they're a loyal return audience, their priority is finding new content. Like, what's new since the last time I visited? And what gets them to return is knowing that there's going to be fresh, updated content. So from that research, we realized that we had 3 main questions to solve with the homepage. We had to solve what's new, what's important, and what's helpful, because Vox has a lot of kind of service-y content, especially with a brand like Eater that has a lot of maps and guides. So we fit those into 3 distinct content buckets, and anything that wasn't serving those goals was removed. And that has been kind of the most important way to solve for performance, is by solving the most important problems and removing all of the extra clutter, because that's actually working against the primary goals. So the results coming out of that is that we have a more simplified but faster loading experience, especially on mobile. Like, the comments that we got with the new homepages are, wow, this loads so much more quickly on my phone, versus before we would get, wow, this is killing my data plan on my phone. So it's a good qualitative metric. But also, because we're serving 8 different brands with distinct missions and audiences, we approach work with each brand through the same lens. So when we rebranded our sports network, SB Nation, we had to look at things like, when is their audience coming to their homepage? So we found that typically desktop users are coming during lunch when they want something to read while they're eating lunch, while mobile users are coming at night on weekdays when they're watching their game on their phone and looking for a second screen experience. So that's the chart of usage on desktop versus mobile. And we also worked with our analytics team to understand, like, what users are clicking on and what they're not. And again, we discovered there were a lot of pieces of content that we were displaying that weren't providing value to users. Right? It wasn't supporting what they were trying to do, and we just found that because they weren't actually clicking on any of the stuff. And by removing the cropped, we were able to create new experiences and new layouts for things like event days and the day after events. So it helps us be more purposeful as well. And through this entire experience of kind of all of the optimizations that our engineering team has done, but our work to simplify, we've seen some pretty significant performance wins, even though it's something that we're consistently working on every day, because we could still be better. The other big shift that in the way that we design has been about building brands instead of websites. So in 2014, the website was the brand, at least for us. That was the cornerstone. And for Vox, the website redesign process centered around the desktop homepage. When we were kicking off a new brand, we designed the desktop homepage. 2014 was also the year where we had a mobile tipping point, where mobile users surpassed desktop. So we had to shift the way that we were working. And the other shift, like I said earlier, we have 85% of adults that get their news on a mobile device in the US. But then interestingly, again from Pew Research, 62% of Americans get their news from social media. 18% do so often, and of course that number is going to grow. And then 88% of smartphone traffic is happening through mobile apps. This is all to say, not as many people are coming to our website directly as they were in 2014. So we had to shift the way that we approached our design work. So we have to think about our content living outside of just our website and onto other brands, other apps. And the way that this is played out is that we have to think about, what our content looks like on Google AMP pages and not deliver just a watered down experience on AMP, Facebook Live video, podcasts on Spotify, Apple News, YouTube, Instagram. And what that has meant for our design process is we've had to think off-platform design first, which is a big shift from this like homepage, desktop homepage first approach. So to give an example, we recently refreshed SB Nation, our sports brand, and the initial explorations for the brand were centered around video and how the brand would look in various video treatments. And on Instagram and social. It's a very visual brand. And really our brand identity team designs the entire landscape and then the entire package, and then we work on figuring out how that's going to work best on our platform. For Recode, which is our technology news brand, again, we had to think about Facebook content and how that's going to look, Snapchat. But also an interesting part of Recode is they have events. They have a very popular code conference. So part of defining the brand was thinking about wayfinding for the event and backdrops during interviews. So this is all like a pretty significant shift in the way that Vox Media approached design in the past. And we started this transition about a year ago in the way that we're working, and I think we still have some work to do, particularly in Google AMP and thinking like AMP first and how to deliver better AMP experiences, because right now we still think like in terms of translating an article down. But we've made some improvements. And then the other thing that we've had to think about with our editorial teams is the idea of multi-platform storytelling. And not just taking a piece of content that was written for our platform and publishing it in many places, but thinking about how that content, the way it looks and the way what the content is, needs to adapt based on different platforms. So in 2016, Vox.com published a Hillary Clinton interview. And on our platform, we could deliver the best, most beautiful experience because we had control over how everything looks and how everything behaves. But then we have to think about how that's going to work on Google, AMP pages, and Facebook. And then where I think it starts to get interesting is thinking about presenting that content in an email newsletter, as an email from Ezra, who did the interview, as a podcast, on YouTube as a full interview, and on Facebook video as a series of shorter clips. And then video has been another really huge initiative at the organization that we've all been thinking about and tried to reorient as we think about video. This was another really kind of mind-blowing stat where you see the amount of mobile data traffic. Right now it's coming 50% from video, but in 2022 it's projected that it's going to be 75% from video. So it's massively growing. And Vox.com has also been doing a ton of work through their video content. And I think what has been really interesting when it comes to thinking about our audience and what they're looking for is we've done a ton of work to challenge our assumptions about what our audience actually needs. So the most popular Vox.com video on Facebook is a 7-minute video about the Syrian war, which what we've learned or what we've been told is it has to be 2 minutes or under on Facebook. They have a short attention span. But this video has gotten, and this was published in April, so it's gotten more at this point, but in April it had 100 million views. So I think it's important not to challenge assumptions and data about what you might hear about what your audience is looking for, because this certainly was surprising but encouraging to us that a 7-minute video would get so much engagement. So to close out, above all, focus on understanding the needs of your audience and use that as a lens to prioritize what is going to be the most important. And that's going to help you deliver your content quickly, regardless of users' connection speeds or what device they're using. And then publish your content where your audience is and challenge assumptions that you might have about what your audience is looking for. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I just want to, these are all custom-made websites, right?
On our platform, yeah.
Okay, so do you have any tips for, like, if you're using WordPress or any other, like, do you know if any tips that you can give us on that side? If we don't have the engineers to do our site?
Yep.
That's a good question. If it comes down to like WordPress, like adding things that you don't necessarily need and you can't remove that, a couple of things that you could do would be image optimization. Like images make up a huge amount of the data that is transferred on a site. So that could be one way. So if you're like uploading images, making sure that they're optimized. Another thing would be fonts are also something that are very large and take up a lot of space to download. So you could simplify the typography that's being used. That's if you're using web fonts. But yeah, I would say image optimization would be a good one.
My question is regarding the topic of speed. And at the beginning of your talk, you said that what has happened, what you had to do in your organization is to optimize how your properties perform. But there will be a time where you can do no more. And the speed at which people access your properties will increase to a point where that improvement or that way of optimizing your websites will no longer be an issue. When do you think that's going to happen?
When do I think it'll happen?
Yeah. How long before you can do anything more to optimize your properties and making that no longer a necessity, not because of technical reasons, but also because users are getting to your properties so fast that there is no need to do any more, even though you have determined that you can't do any more because there will be a theoretical limit to being able to do something.
I mean, I think as long as connection speeds are still varying across the board, you know, there might be people that can reach our content very quickly. There might be people that are still on a slower network. So, I mean, for us, we're constantly trying to optimize. So I don't think we're at a point where we're say like, you know, we have reached the peak speed.
There will be, because it has happened before in other aspects of the whole process of publishing the web.
Gracias, Yesenia.